1. Let me tell you about this absolutely incredible 1983 Dodge D150 that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist. I've got to say, this isn't your average 30-plus-year-old pickup. This is something really special. What we're looking at here is a meticulously restored D150 with just 51,000 original miles and only 2 previous owners. The restoration work is fresh. We're talking just 200 miles on it. And it was done by Michael Brothers in Wilkesboro, North Carolina, who are known for their award-winning work. That's a huge credibility point right there. The truck features its original Slant 6 engine, which has been completely rebuilt, paired with an 833 4-speed manual transmission and a Hurst Competition Plus shifter. That's a sweet combination for anyone who loves to really drive their vehicle. The oak bed with stainless strips is just beautiful, and those new tires with NOS dog dish caps really complete the period-correct look. Inside, you're getting leather bucket seats with a console, and they've added a modern touch with a Pioneer stereo system. Yes, there's no AC, but that's part of the authentic experience of an early 80s truck. The silver exterior paint is iconic, and being a North Carolina truck for most of its life means it's 100% rust-free. That's incredibly rare for a vehicle of this age. At $25,000, you're looking at a premium price, but considering the quality of the restoration, the documented history, and the overall condition, it's actually quite fair for what you're getting. They're even offering a professionally rebuilt 360 V8 as an optional extra, not included in the price, which could make for an interesting upgrade path. 2. We're looking at a pretty interesting 1977 Ford F-250 Camper Special Ranger XLT that's asking $6,600. Let me be straight with you. This is one of those honest, working-class trucks that shows its age but still has plenty of life left. The big story here is what's under the hood. You're getting that legendary 460 big block V8 paired with the bulletproof C6 automatic transmission. The seller says it runs decent, which in old truck language usually means it's not perfect but gets the job done. Being a West Coast truck is definitely a plus, as these typically have less rust than their eastern counterparts. Now, let's be real here. This truck isn't winning any beauty contests. The seller's honest about it having dings and dents, which is pretty typical for a 46-year-old work truck. But hey, that's part of the character, right? The green paint probably isn't showroom fresh anymore, but these old Ford trucks wear their battle scars with dignity. Being a Camper Special Ranger XLT means this was actually a pretty well-equipped truck in its day. These were built tougher than standard F-250S to handle camper duties, and the Ranger XLT trim was pretty much top of the line for its era. At $6,600, you're getting a lot of classic American iron for your money. Sure, it's not perfect, but it's a solid platform whether you're looking for a project truck, a weekend workhorse, or just want to cruise in a piece of Ford truck history. These old Fords are getting harder to find, especially camper specials that haven't been completely worn out. 3. We're checking out this 1980 Chevy El Camino that's up for grabs at $7,500. Let me be straight with you about this unique car-truck hybrid that's caught our attention. What we've got here is a Survivor El Camino with 64,000 miles showing on the odometer, which is pretty reasonable for a 43-year-old vehicle. The seller mentions it's running a rebuilt V6 engine, not the more common V8 you might expect in these, but honestly, that might be better for your fuel bills. It's paired with an automatic transmission, making it an easy cruiser. Now, I've got to be real with you. The seller's description is pretty bare bones, which always makes me a bit cautious. They mention good tiers, they mean tires, but we definitely want to see more details about when that engine rebuild happened and what other maintenance has been done. The orange paint makes this El Camino stand out. These weren't exactly subtle vehicles to begin with. Being a 1980 model, you're getting the later, more squared-off body style that defined the final generation of El Caminos. At $7,500, you're in the ballpark for these vehicles, but I definitely want to get a good look underneath and check for any rust issues. These were notorious for rust in certain areas. The clean title is definitely a plus though. 4. We're looking at something really special, a 1966 Chevrolet El Camino that's currently listed for $27,500. And let me tell you, this isn't your average classic car truck. The star of the show here is that fresh 396 big block V8 engine with only 5,364 miles on it. For those who know their classic Chevys, the 396 is a legendary power plant that brings serious muscle to the table. The seller mentions custom extras on the engine, which definitely piques my interest. Sounds like this El Camino might have some extra punch under that hood. This 66 represents what many consider the golden era of El Caminos. The second generation, with those beautiful clean lines, stacked headlights, and that iconic sweeping roofline. The red paint really shows off those curves, and from the excellent condition rating, it seems this beauty has been well maintained or restored. The automatic transmission makes this a comfortable cruiser, perfect for both showing off at car meets and making the occasional Home Depot run, because hey, it's still technically a pickup, right? At $27,500, we're talking serious collector territory here. But considering the fresh 396 build, the apparent condition, and the increasing value of these second-gen El Caminos, especially with big block power, the price isn't out of line with the current market. 5. We're looking at a 1965 Chevrolet C10 pickup that's listed for $29,900. And I've got to be completely honest, the seller's description is surprisingly sparse for a truck commanding this kind of price. What we can see is that this is a dealer-listed C10 wearing what appears to be a custom teal paint job. The condition is listed as excellent, but here's where I need to be straight with you. There's a lot of crucial information missing. We don't know the mileage, there's no engine specs provided, and the drivetrain details are blank. For a nearly $30,000 classic truck, that's information you'd really want to know. Now the 65 C10 is one of the most desirable years for these classic Chevy trucks. They're known for their clean, classic lines and that iconic front-end design that's become a symbol of American truck heritage. These trucks have skyrocketed in value over the past decade, especially well-restored examples. The teal color choice is interesting, definitely not original, but could make for a great show truck if the quality of the paintwork is top-notch. Being a New Mexico truck could be a huge plus, as vehicles from that region typically have less rust issues due to the dry climate. At $29,900, you're in serious restoration territory pricing. For this kind of money, you'd expect a thoroughly restored truck with either a pristine original powertrain or a well-thought-out modern upgrade. The lack of details in the listing makes it crucial to see this truck in person and get full documentation of any restoration work. 6. We're looking at a really interesting project, a 1956 Ford F100 that's listed for $22,900. And I've got to be completely honest about what we're dealing with here. First things first, this is an unfinished project, and the seller is upfront about it being 80% complete. But here's where it gets interesting. The bones of this build are seriously impressive. We're looking at a classic F100 that's being built with modern performance in mind. Let's break down what's already done. There's a Chevy 350 small block. Yeah, Ford purists might cringe, but these engines are reliable and parts are everywhere. Paired with an automatic transmission, both already mounted. The suspension setup is where things get really cool. You've got a TCI Mustang II front end with air ride, a 4-link rear setup, and airbags at all 4 corners. The frame is powder-coated gloss black, and the suspension components are done in anthracite gray. That's attention to detail right there. The 4-wheel disc brake upgrade is a major plus for safety and performance, though it still needs the master cylinder and brake lines installed. The air ride system comes with a new kit in box, but needs the hoses run and tank mounted. Now let's be real about what you're getting into. The front clip isn't fully mounted, and the bed is just loosely bolted on. The cab is properly secured though, which is good news. The seller mentions having lots of extra parts, including matching chrome bumpers and a painted tailgate, plus enough spare parts to potentially build another truck. 7. We're looking at a 1976 Ford F-150 that's got an interesting story to tell, and I'm going to be completely straight with you about what we're looking at here. This is a one-family-owned F-150 with 250,000 miles on the clock, and the seller is refreshingly honest about its condition. It's a working truck that's earned its retirement, wearing its original copper metallic paint and showing every bit of its 47 years of service. The seller's right. No surprises, you see what you get to work with. Under the hood, you've got the 360 V8, which is paired with a new process 435-speed manual transmission. That's a robust powertrain combination. The 9-inch rear differential is a sought-after feature, known for its durability. The good news is that it runs, drives, steers, and stops. Sometimes that's all you can ask for in a truck of this age. Now let's be real here, this truck needs work. The seller's listing it in fair condition and openly states it needs attention and a better life. We're talking about a retired work truck that's been earning its keep since the Ford administration. But here's the cool part. It comes with documentation from the original purchasing dealer, Lakewood Fordland, which is pretty rare for a truck this old. At $7,500, though they're asking $8,250 OBO, you're buying potential here. This could be a great candidate for either a full restoration or a resto-mod project. These 70s F-150S are becoming increasingly popular among collectors and customizers, and finding a documented one-family truck is pretty special. 8. We're looking at something really special. A 1965 Chevy C20 that's been lovingly preserved and upgraded, listed at $22,000. Let me tell you why this one's worth your attention. This truck has a fantastic story. Restored back in 1985 by the seller's uncle, who was a metal worker, and here's what makes it special. Absolutely no Bondo was used. That's huge for these old trucks. The restoration was done right, with all paint stripped and rust properly removed. Since then, it's been babied, rarely seeing rain or even a car wash. Under the hood, we're not looking at the original engine, but something possibly even better. A seriously built 350 V8 from a 72 C10. We're talking a 4-bolt main block board .030 over, comp cam, new lifters, double roller timing chain, ARP head studs, and Summit 202 heads. With only 5,000 miles on this build, it's just getting broken in. The original 4-speed manual transmission is still in place, which is a huge plus for authenticity. Modern upgrades include working AC, added 2 years ago, and recent improvements like new tires, brakes, grille, radiator, front bumper, and exhaust system. The truck sits right with a 2x 4-inch drop using C10 springs, giving it that perfect stance without going overboard. The seller's proven its reliability with multiple Phoenix road trips in 105-degree heat. That's confidence-inspiring for a classic truck. The odometer shows 29,000 miles, though with the restoration and engine swap, that's likely not original. 9. We're looking at a 1969 Ford F-250 that's listed for $2,600, and I'm going to give you the straight scoop on this old workhorse. Let's be honest here, this is a basic, no-frills work truck that's seen its share of miles. The odometer has rolled over. But for the price point, there are some interesting positives to consider. The seller notes it has a straight body with no major rust, which is pretty remarkable for a 54-year-old truck. They've also put new tires on it and installed a new seat, so at least you won't be sitting on springs while you drive. Under the hood, you've got a V8, though the seller doesn't specify which one, paired with an automatic transmission, and it's a 2WD setup. These old Ford trucks were built tough, and their powertrains were generally pretty reliable if maintained. Now, let's be real. The fair condition rating tells us this isn't a show truck by any means. The red paint probably isn't winning any awards, and with a rolled-over odometer, you know this truck has put in its work. But at $2,600, you're not buying a restored classic. You're buying a piece of American truck history that could either be a fun project or a basic work truck with some vintage charm. This could be perfect for someone who wants an affordable entry into classic trucks, needs a basic work truck with character, or is looking for a project that's still drivable while you improve it. Just don't expect perfection. This is a truck that wears its age and work history proudly. 10. We're checking out a 1979 Chevy pickup that's got something special under the hood. A rebuilt 454 big block V8. Listed at $15,000 OBO? Let me tell you what makes this square-body Chevy interesting. This is a short bed model, which is typically more desirable than the long bed versions, and the seller says it's very straight. Always good news for a truck over 40 years old. The odometer shows 1,500 miles, which likely represents the mileage since the engine rebuild, not the total miles on the truck. Speaking of that engine, the 454 is a monster of a power plant, known for making serious power. The seller mentions having documentation of everything that's been done to the truck in pictures, which is always reassuring when dealing with a modified vehicle. Good record keeping suggests careful ownership. Some nice details here: the door seals are new, no more wind noise, and the seller emphasizes it's tight with no rattles, which is pretty impressive for a truck of this age. The tires are nearly new with only about 100 miles on them, and there's a carpeted bed cover, adding some practicality and protection. The white paint appears to be in good shape from the description, and being listed in good condition suggests this isn't just another worn-out work truck. The automatic transmission makes it an easy cruiser, perfect for both weekend shows and daily driving. At $15,000, with room to negotiate, you're getting a well-sorted square-body Chevy with a powerful rebuilt engine. These trucks have been climbing in value, especially clean short beds, and the 454 swap adds some serious muscle to the equation. 11. We're looking at a 1978 Chevy C20 that's listed for $1,500, and I'm going to be completely honest about what we've got here. This is definitely a project truck that needs some serious attention. Let's start with the good news. It's got the mighty 454 big block V8, paired with the bulletproof TH400 transmission. That's a fantastic powertrain combination when it's working right. The body is described as mostly rust-free, which is pretty rare for a 45-year-old work truck. Now, let's talk about the issues, because there are several. First, there's likely a blown head gasket. Foamy coolant is a classic sign, though the seller notes it wasn't overheating before being parked. The steering column has been torn apart from an attempted theft, which means you'll need to address that. There's also a dent in the passenger door to consider. The odometer shows 50,499 miles, but on a truck this age, it's probably rolled over at least once. However, the seller mentions it fires right up and sounds healthy, despite its issues, which suggests the engine isn't completely toast. At $1,500, you're basically buying a project or parts truck. That 454/TH400 combination alone could be worth the asking price if you're parting it out. But if you're handy with tools and looking for a project, this could be an interesting starting point. These square-body Chevys are gaining popularity, and finding one with a big block and minimal rust is getting harder. 12. We're looking at a 1982 Dodge Ram D100, listed for $8,700, and the seller is refreshingly honest about both its strengths and weaknesses. Let's start with the heart of this truck. It's running the legendary Slant 6 225, or as the seller enthusiastically calls it, Tower of Power Baby. Paired with a 3-speed automatic with overdrive. These engines are known for their reliability and longevity, even if they're not the most powerful. The seller has clearly invested a lot in this truck during 2022, with an impressive list of new parts including new carburetor, original single barrel, radiator, water pump, fuel pump, rebuilt transmission, new torque converter, alternator, and front lower control arms. They've also previously rebuilt the rear diff and modernized it with an updated stereo and LED lighting. Now let's be real about the issues, because there are some. It's burning oil, specifically cylinder 5 showing low compression, has some oil leaks from gaskets, and the power steering pump is on its way out. There's also some surface rust on the frame, and the driver's side floor is starting to show its age, though no holes yet. With 78,251 miles showing, this truck has relatively low mileage for its age. The seller mentions it would make a great candidate for restoration or a show truck build, and with the amount of mechanical work already done, they might be right. At $8,700, you're getting a classic square-body Dodge that's had significant mechanical investment but still needs some TLC. The seller's situation, new baby, no time, means this truck needs a new home where it can get the attention it deserves. 13. We're looking at a seriously impressive 1967 Chevrolet El Camino that's listed for $30,000. And let me tell you, this is one seriously well-built machine. Under the hood, we're looking at a 383-stroker small block Chevy that's been professionally built with some top-shelf components. We're talking Edelbrock RPM aluminum heads and intake, Holley carburetor, and Hedman stainless shorty headers. The dyno numbers tell the real story. 353 horsepower and 392 Ft-lbs of torque at the wheels. That's serious power. The transmission is a professionally built 700 R4 automatic from FTI, which gives you both strong performance and the comfort of overdrive for highway cruising. Out back, there's a Ford 9-inch rear end with a posi traction differential, basically the gold standard for putting power to the ground reliably. The suspension and handling haven't been overlooked either. It's got tubular control arms, sway bars, and bare four-wheel disc brakes. That means this El Camino doesn't just go fast, it handles and stops like a modern vehicle. Inside, they've added some nice modern touches while keeping the classic look. An I Did It tilt steering column, Dakota digital gauges, and modern stereo system. Plus, it's got AC, making it a comfortable cruiser for those hot summer days. The odometer shows 2,000 miles, which likely represents the mileage since the build was completed. The black paint looks sharp, and the overall condition is listed as excellent. 14. We're looking at a 1979 Chevy K20 that's listed for $5,000, and I'm going to be completely straight with you about what we're dealing with here. Let's start with the basics. It's a 4X 4K20 with a small block 350 V8 and a manual transmission. The odometer shows 12,000 miles, but it's rolled over, so the actual mileage is anyone's guess. The seller is upfront about this being a project truck, and the fair condition rating backs that up. Here's an interesting detail. The emissions equipment has been removed, specifically the smog pump, but the seller does have it and says the truck will pass emissions if you reinstall it. That's actually good information to have, especially if you're in a state with strict emissions testing. Now, let's be real here. When someone says they need to sell fast and describe something as definitely a project truck, you know you're not getting a show-ready vehicle. The seller's brief description suggests there are probably multiple issues that need addressing, but at least they're honest about its project status. At $5,000 OBO, you're buying potential here. These square-body Chevys, especially 4X 4K20S, are becoming increasingly popular for restoration and modification. The 350 engine is one of the most reliable and easily modifiable engines ever made, and parts are readily available everywhere. This could be a good starting point for someone who wants to build their own custom truck, isn't afraid of some wrenching, and has the time and budget to tackle a project. Just make sure to thoroughly inspect everything and ask lots of questions about its current condition before making an offer. 15. We're looking at something pretty special, a 1975 Chevy K5 Blazer listed at $17,000. And this isn't just any K5, it's one of the increasingly rare full convertible models. Let's talk about what makes this particular Blazer interesting. From 1973 to 1975, Chevy made these K5S with a full convertible top that went all the way to the windshield pillars, different from the later half-cab designs. The seller's right, these are getting harder to find, especially in good condition, and they're definitely following the value trend of their 69, 72 predecessors. The odometer shows 64,945 miles, which is relatively low for a 48-year-old vehicle if accurate. It's wearing blue paint and comes with four-wheel drive. Naturally, paired with a V8 engine, though the seller doesn't specify which one, and an automatic transmission. The condition is listed as good, which is promising for a vehicle of this age. The seller seems to understand the market well, noting how these early square-body Blazers, especially the full convertible models, are appreciating in value. They're particularly sought after by collectors and enthusiasts who appreciate their unique design and capability. At $17,000, you're buying into a segment of the classic SUV market that's been heating up. These full convertible K5S offer something special that later models can't match. that complete open-air experience that makes them perfect for summer cruising or off-road adventures. 16. We're looking at a 1977 Ford F-150 Custom that's listed for $6,800, and this one's got some interesting history and potential. First off, this is a 3-owner truck with some great provenance. The current owner got it from his uncle who had owned it since 1979. That kind of documented history is always nice to find. Under the hood, you've got the reliable 351 Windsor V8 paired with a 4-speed manual transmission, which is a great combination for these old Fords. The seller has put some real work into this truck. The interior has been completely redone, except for the door panels, and there are quite a few new parts, including the alternator, starter, tires, and rear drum brakes. It's got a full AC system, though it could use a classic upgrade kit to get it working properly. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The bed is currently removed as part of a restoration process. There's a dented taillight on the bed, and the seller mentions considering converting it to a flatbed instead of reinstalling the long bed. This could actually be an opportunity for the next owner to decide which direction to take the build. With 120,000 miles on the clock, it's been used but not abused. The seller notes it runs and drives great, which is always good to hear. Some minor issues need attention, like the door jamb seals needing replacement, but that's pretty typical for a truck of this age. At $6,800, you're getting a solid project that's already had some important work done. The fact that it's running and driving well means you can work on it while still using it. The removed auxiliary fuel tank is included if you want to reinstall it. 17. We're looking at a 1970 Ford F-100 that's listed for $6,000. And I'm going to be completely honest about what we're dealing with here. Let's start with the really interesting part. This is a one-owner truck with just 43,000 claimed miles and has never been in an accident. That kind of history is pretty rare for a 53-year-old vehicle. However, there's a big but coming. The seller is upfront about the truck's current condition, listing it as fair and noting that it doesn't currently run. While they mention it just needs a battery, with old vehicles that have been sitting, it's usually wise to assume there might be more issues lurking. When vehicles sit, seals dry out, fluids get gunky, and systems can deteriorate. We know it's got a V8 engine and an automatic transmission, but the seller's extremely brief description leaves a lot of questions unanswered. No mention of rust, interior condition, or how long it's been sitting. The selling as-is statement suggests you're buying it exactly as it sits, warts and all. At $6,000, you're paying primarily for the potential here. One-owner, low-mileage trucks from this era are getting harder to find, and these early 70s F-100S have a great classic look that's becoming increasingly popular. However, the price might be a bit optimistic given its non-running condition and the lack of detailed information. 18. We're looking at a 1979 Chevrolet Blazer Cheyenne that's listed for $29,000, and this isn't your typical K5. It's a lowered street machine with some interesting modifications. First, let's address the elephant in the room. This Blazer has 311,500 miles on the clock. However, the seller's description suggests it's been well maintained and upgraded over the years. It's running a 350 V8 that runs great. And importantly, it's a working AC truck, always a big plus in a classic vehicle. What makes this Blazer unique is its street-oriented build. It's got a Western chassis C-notch kit and lowered front coil springs, giving it that perfect stance, and it's rolling on 20 inches Riddler wheels. This is definitely more boulevard cruiser than off-road warrior, and that's exactly what makes it interesting. Recent updates include newly upholstered seats, a new dash pad, water pump, and Black Widow mufflers. All the electronics are working properly. Gauges, lights, and cruise control, which is pretty impressive for a 44-year-old vehicle. The rear glass operates as it should via the dash switch, and the hardtop is crack-free, both important points for these Blazers. Being a Cheyenne model, this was one of the nicer trim levels for its time, and being a 2WD model makes it perfect for its current street-oriented setup. The black paint gives it a clean, modern look that works well with the lowered stance. At $29,000, you're paying for a well-sorted, uniquely modified Blazer that stands out from the typical lifted 4x4 builds we usually see. While the mileage is high, the list of working features and upgrades suggests this has been a labor of love rather than just another old SUV. 19. We're looking at a 1965 Chevy C10 listed for $5,500. And let me give you the straight scoop on this barn find without the barn. This is a West Coast truck, which is always a good starting point. These trucks typically have less serious rust issues than their East Coast counterparts. The seller is upfront about its fair condition, but there are some interesting positives here. Under the hood, you've got a 350 V8 that turns over. Note, they don't say it runs, just that it turns over. Paired with a classic 3-on-the-tree manual transmission. That's the original style column-shifted manual that's becoming increasingly rare to find. Here's what's really interesting. The seller claims there's no cancer, serious rust, just surface rust, and being a West Coast truck makes this claim more credible. They also mention that the chassis, differential, and struts are in great shape, which could save you a lot of headaches if you're planning a restoration. Now, let's be real here. When someone says they had many plans for a vehicle but have to sell, it usually means this is a project that never got started. The brief description and fair condition rating suggest this truck needs a good bit of work to get back on the road properly. At $5,500, you're buying potential here. These 65 C10s are highly desirable for restoration projects, and finding one without serious rust issues is getting harder every year. The 350 engine, if salvageable, is a great platform for building power, and parts are readily available everywhere. 20. We're looking at a 1961 Chevy C10 Apache listed for $14,500, and I've got to be honest, the seller's description is incredibly brief for a truck commanding this kind of price. Let's work with what we know. It's an Apache Model C10, which is from the first generation of Chevy's CK Series trucks. These are becoming increasingly collectible. The odometer shows 28,000 miles, though on a 62-year-old truck, that number should probably be taken with a grain of salt. The seller claims it's rust-free and has lots of new parts, but frustratingly doesn't specify what those parts are. We know it's got an automatic transmission, but there's no mention of which engine it's running or its condition. For a $14,500 asking price, you'd really want more details about what you're buying. Here's what makes these Apache C10s special. They represent the beginning of Chevy's modern truck era, with their distinctive styling featuring those wide-set double headlights and clean body lines. They're becoming harder to find, especially in rust-free condition. At $14,500, or best offer, you're in serious classic truck territory. While these trucks have been climbing in value, you'd really want to inspect this one thoroughly and get a detailed list of those new parts and any restoration work that's been done.